The area that I'm focused on is decentralization of the voting power in the NNS. So when the protocol was launched, all neurons in the NNS were configured by default to follow Dfinity or ICA. And that meant that in the very, very beginning, when Dfinity would vote, they would trigger pretty much 100% of the voting power in the NNS. There were very few people that were voting independently at that point in time. And after several months, they started showing signs of wanting to start that decentralization. Now, this decentralization to become truly decentralized, where you've got many contributors and nobody has enough voting power to trigger, a 50% majority in the NNS, that's going to be a long journey. That's going to be 20 years or so. But in order to get there, you have to transition along the way because the IC is very complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of changes that need to be made in order to make improvements. And there's a lot of people in the community that need to become familiar with how it works and what those changes are. So.
Welcome back, guys. Today I'm here with Wenzel Bartlett, a real internet computer OG and also founder of CodeGov. And the first question for you, Wenzel, is what is CodeGov and what's your mission?
So CodeGov is an organization that I founded about 2 years ago where I recruit and hire developers who have the skills to review certain types of NNS proposals, the more technical proposal topics that are important for the protocol to operate. Most of the proposals that we see in the NNS are proposals to change the protocol. And and so what we try to do is have people that are able to read the code for those changes and verify certain information and vote independently on those proposals. We cover the ICOS version election proposal topic, which is basically what runs on all of our node machines. We cover protocol canister management. So, and then we cover things related to the nodes and how they're organized. So node admin and participant management, as well as subnet management, which is how the nodes are organized into subnets. So there are certain rules that apply to how those nodes are onboarded and offboarded, as well as how the nodes are organized into subnets to meet topology requirements that meet certain decentralization metrics, and so we review those proposals as well.
Right. And so the general idea is to basically contribute to a higher level of decentralization for the internet computer, right? So what do you think nowadays are the main challenges for the internet computer to become more decentralized?
The area that I'm focused on is decentralization of the voting power in the NNS. So, I mean, when the protocol was launched, all neurons in the NNS were configured by default to follow Dfinity or ICA. And that meant that in the very, very beginning, when Dfinity would vote, they would trigger pretty much 100% of the voting power in the NNS. There were very few people that were voting independently at that point in time. And after several months, they started showing signs of wanting to start that decentralization. Now, this decentralization to become truly decentralized, where you've got many contributors and nobody has enough voting power to trigger, a 50% majority in the NNS, that's going to be a long journey. That's going to be 20 years or so is what I'm guessing. But in order to get there, you have to transition along the way because the IC is very complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of changes that need to be made in order to make improvements. And there's a lot of people in the community that need to become familiar with how it works and what those changes are. So after the first couple of years of the NNS, I mean, within the first couple of years, Dfinity had already made changes where the governance topic itself which is where the motion proposals are at, and the register no neuron proposals are at, as well as the SNS proposals where you launch an SNS. Those proposal topics have become relatively decentralized compared to all these other technical topics, and it's because of some changes that the Dfinity proposed and implemented, a year and a half. I'm sorry, about half a year to a year after Genesis. And so there were some known neurons that got started back then. Synapse is one of them, which is another neuron that I'm participating in and help start. But also there was a neuron at the time called CycleDAO, which is now called Arthur's neuron, as well as ICDevs that were involved back then. So anyway, it's been sort of an evolution until about 2 years ago. Really, the only options were those neurons plus Dfinity in terms of who to follow. There weren't a lot of known neurons, and then suddenly we started getting a lot of known neurons, all of which who primarily focus on governance and SNS topics and none of the technical topics. So that's when a couple of years ago I thought, okay, we need to start helping move in the direction of reviewing technical topics. And the only way that's ever going to happen is if people are incentivized to do it. The tokenomics that we have today don't incentivize anyone to put any extra effort into proposal reviews. It doesn't incentivize anyone with technical competence on these topics to get involved. And so, I had the idea of going to Dfinity for a grant that would enable me to use it to hire developers that can develop this expertise and can start reviewing these technical proposals. It was not a hard sell, and the reason is that this is what Dfinity wants. Dfinity wants decentralization to occur. It needs to occur over a slower progression. They have more recently, within the last 6 to 8 months, they've actually opened grants up to other organizations in order to in order to identify other organizations that are interested in doing the same kind of work. And now we have, I think it's a total of 5 organizations that are reviewing these 4 proposal topics. And here in the next month or so, they're going to do it again. They're going to roll out a new program, a revised program. My hope is that it will have more grants for more organizations and include a few other technical proposal topics, and just continue to move us in the direction of decentralization on the technical proposals that occur every single week. Dfinity is really good about taking this seriously, about trying to create the proposals in a way that enable people to read them, to go to GitHub and read the commits, to build the replicas, to verify the hashes, to verify the arguments and things like that are in these proposals. They post them on the forum. They encourage discussion. And when people do review them, like CodeGov reviews every single one of these technical proposals, and when we do, I have the distinct sense that Dfinity does read them and takes our feedback into consideration before they cast their own vote. So today, Dfinity still casts the majority opinion, and when they vote, the proposals will either be adopted or rejected. So really, all of the organizations like CodeGov that are performing these reviews are just providing feedback to Dfinity before they cast their vote, because Dfinity intentionally waits until the last day before they cast their vote, and they give us time to accumulate that feedback. But eventually, true decentralization means that we move beyond that, and so eventually, more organizations hopefully will step up and be incentivized to perform this work and gain the voting power necessary, such that it eventually becomes Dfinity not casting 50% of the vote, but casting less than 50% of the vote, therefore requiring the community to also vote in order to implement the changes. again, we're only four years into this project. It's still way too early for that to happen. So I don't know exactly what the timeline is going to be, but all indications are that Dfinity truly believes in decentralization of the IC and wants to move us in that direction. And CodeGov is just here to help with that transition, hopefully set a good example for others. I mean, I want to very much encourage other people to get involved because we have a lot of really smart and capable people out there, and I can see no better way to help support developers in our community or highly active people in our community with whatever they're working on the IC trying to build. I mean, I can see no better way to supplement their income than to roll up their sleeves and get involved in the review of the technical proposals and to get compensated for it in a fair way so that that can help sustain the projects that they're working on. So that's, I guess, is what I see as our most critical needs, from my opinion, is to help just the community to get involved and continue to engage in advancing the decentralization of the IC. Again, long term, not immediate, and certainly not in any kind of adversarial way with Dfinity. Dfinity is doing all the right things. They have all the right people. They have the right attitude and the right philosophy, and they're moving us in that direction. And I think community just needs to step up and participate in that way. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's also very cool to listen from you that you're working closely to Dfinity. It's very nice to hear that they're very open in this process of decentralizing even more the internet computer.
By the way, guys, if you want to buy ICP or other tokens, the best platform today is BYDFI, as it offers the lowest fees in the industry. They are my favorite exchange platform, and I've partnered with them to bring you a $50 reward just for completing KYC once you sign up. So all you have to do in order to win $50 is to provide your ID after registering to the platform. In addition, you will earn 10% on your deposit amount, an additional $200 reward if your trading volume reaches $300,000 in futures contracts. This is just for a limited time, so go below this video right now, check the description, and click on my BYDFI affiliate link to get access to the exclusive bonuses that I negotiated for you.
And I'm curious, how many people are working with you right now at CodeGov, and how do you plan to onboard even more developers in performing these reviews?
So right now, I think we have 9 total people on our team. But and we actually had more previously when we were the only ones receiving the grants. I was able to create a structure or an environment in which what I really wanted to do the whole time was to help encourage more people to get involved, to give them a shot at developing the expertise and let people who are really good at it shine and stand out and even go off and do their own thing if they want to, or stay on the CodeGov team for as long as they wanted. But with the Grant for Voting Neuron program, the Dfinity rolled out, the funding was slightly less. It didn't, and the requirements are also different. They only require 3 people on a team on each topic. They don't require the higher numbers that we had committed to each topic. So when the grant program is structured in that way, it's really hard to justify trying to add more people to each topic. That adding more people to each topic really comes from having more teams involved, not more people on the same team, but more teams involved, which I think is totally fair. It's a different paradigm. And so, if there are more topics, technical topics added to the list of grant opportunities, then that's where we'll probably add more people in the future. And there are more technical topics that are not included at the moment. So I'm hopeful that does happen, but more than likely we probably won't try to expand the number of people focused on each topic. Like ICOS version election, even though we only have a requirement to have 3 people reviewing that, we still have 5 people reviewing that because it's one of the most important and the most complicated technical topics there are. And instead of having an environment in which only 3 people each week are required to review it, I would rather everyone stay up to date each week on all the changes and be exposed to what those changes are so they can like see the full transition over time. And we can have more eyes looking at the code and finding, issues that could be there, because really all it takes is one person, no matter how many people you have reviewing, all it takes is one person find an issue, bring it to Dfinity's attention, and that by itself could trigger the need to reject the proposal, fix it, and come back another time with a version that doesn't have that same issue. So in terms of growing CodeGov, it kind of just depends on what our funding availability is, what the requirements of the grant program are, and whether or not any new proposal topics are added to the mix. But I believe that there is opportunity for growth. It's just that right now, because we're funded purely from this grant program, it's kind of, you just got to work within the boundaries of that program and what's being offered. So.
Right. And I wanted to ask you, would you like to explain to us how CodeGov works, and how do you work with the reviews, and maybe showing us a little demo by sharing your screen on your website, showing us the neuron, the bounty program, and all these details?
Yeah, at a high level, really the grant program itself, Dfinity has outlined what the requirements are. So for each proposal topic, what each reviewer should be looking for, how much time they need to spend on it, how many people need to vote on it. But the requirement is that you go and you review the technical content. If you need to build, like on ICOS version election, you build the replica on your own machine, and the building process results in a hash. It'll generate a hash, and you compare that to the hash that's in the proposal itself. And as long as they're consistent, you know that what's in the proposal is what they say is in the proposal. And then they also give the list of commits and links to the GitHub where you can go and take a look at those changes. So it's presented in a way where when you click on that link, you get to see side by side the existing and the change. So what's being removed and what's being added, along with all the existing content that's not changing. So it becomes relatively easy to see what those changes are. And then once you're done with that review, you have to write up a report. And the report, generally starts with, the proposal ID, maybe the proposal name, who you are, what your name is, what organization you're working with, how you decided to vote, whether it's adopt or reject, and then a summary of why you voted the way you voted. So high level things that you found. And then below that is just a list of a little bit more detailed list of what you found, written in your own words. So a lot of reviewers choose to do that on a commit by commit basis, and they'll put that into their report. And all of that is posted on the forum. So every reviewer who is getting paid to perform a review has to make a post on the forum associated with that review. So that's sort of high level what happens. Did you say you wanted me to share my screen and sort of walk you through that a little bit?
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Let me just start here, and I'll first go to CodeGov. CodeGov.org, and this is our website. So, and it does need to be updated, but what is pretty much updated all the time is the CodeGov NNS Neuron describes what proposals we review, which ones are funded by the grant, who our followees are on each of these proposal topics. So topics 5, 6, 7, and 15, these are all reviewed by Zach, Enrique, and Tim, who are all three on our team. These are their neuron IDs. So if you really, and they're public neuron IDs, so if you wanted to track their own individual votes, you could. Of course, the CodeGov neuron ID is this one here. We're a known neuron. So when you look at any proposal, you can see the list of known neurons, and this is the neuron ID that you see. ICOS version election, we have 5 people. Protocol canister management, we have 4 people reviewing it. And then CodeGov is also involved in both the NNS and SNS beyond just these technical proposal topics. So these up here are the ones where we receive grants and we have reviewers that get paid. But for the governance topic and for the SNS and Neurons Fund, we don't get paid for this. Everyone here is listed as a volunteer. And this list of people has changed over time. Nobody's expected, if you're a volunteer participating in governance, I don't expect anybody to do that, for a lifetime. You volunteer for as long as you feel like you can make a commitment to doing it reliably. And so these are the folks that are currently listed for governance and SNS for CodeGov. And then we also have a similar type of thing, known neurons for these SNSs. So water neuron Kong swap analysis. And so same format. These are the topics. These are the people that are volunteers for voting on those topics. And then these are the more technical topics down here. There's no grants for voting on any SNS proposals, and therefore even these technical topics here, the only reason I'm following Quint and the dev team is because they've announced in the past publicly that they review these proposal topics. And therefore, because I know that they are committed to reviewing them and voting reliably, I configure them as followees for those topics for the CodeGov known neuron. So that's kind of how it works for water neuron Kong swap analysis. And of course, the people that are involved in each of those SNSs are people who are passionate about these particular topics, and it's not necessarily the same people. So that's sort of how that works from our website perspective. And then if you go to, so subnet management is one of the proposals that we review. Sorry, I'm just kind of trying to pick one of the more recent ones. It's focused on this particular subnet, which means that there have been many proposals to make changes to the composition of that subnet over time. And so therefore, there are different proposals listed in this one thread. Subnet management's a little bit unique in that for whatever reason, all the proposals are linked to the particular subnet as opposed to having an individual forum topic for each proposal. That's how basically all the people that were elected to become reviewers for this topic, that's how they decided early on they preferred to do it. Whereas Dfinity in the very beginning had asked us to do this on a per proposal basis, which makes sense for ICOS version election and protocol canister management, node admin, etc., but not necessarily for subnet management. So anyway, in this particular case, Tim is one of our CodeGov reviewers. He reviewed these 3 proposal topics at the same time, voted to adopt all of them, and gave an explanation for why he voted to vote for all of them. And of course, he is a team member for CodeGov, and CodeGov, just to have a little explanation of who CodeGov is and what we're doing, we go ahead and have this little footnote of information that people can read if they want to, but we hide it up underneath the summary prompt. Same thing happens for other teams as well. So Lacosta, this is Henrique. He's another team member for CodeGov, and he reviewed these 3. He chose to to separate out each one individually and give the explanation. Andrea is a team member for Dfinity, answering some questions that have come up. Zach is the other of our team members who reviews these same proposal topics. So anyway, this is just generally how it works. This is Lorimer. He's in a different node neuron that is performing these reviews. And he has, his own style of doing things. And he's got a few other team members like Alligator and Malith who review these as well. So yeah, I guess that's an example of all 6 of the people who are currently reviewing this particular proposal topic.
And I wanted to ask you, what's your roadmap from here going forward?
I would say the roadmap is to continue doing what we've been doing, which is, stay aware of the changes that are happening on the NNS and to continue to try to encourage people and organizations to get involved in technical proposal reviews. I think that it's critically important, especially if we want to be decentralized. I think we're still very young and new in all of this, and there's not nearly enough people doing it and doing it with enough depth. I think Dfinity wants and welcomes that to happen, but the tokenomics don't encourage it. It's going to have to be incentivized in some way, and I want to continue advocating for those incentives. So I'm a fan of, I certainly want CodeGov to continue to participate in doing this, and we will, but I also want to encourage other organizations to do the same thing. I don't think it should just be 2 per proposal topic. There are some proposal topics that are more politically charged than others, and those include everything related to nodes and subnets these days. So subnet management, node admin, and participant management have all been very politically charged over the last 3 or 4 months or so, and because of that, I think there's a very strong case for adding way more than 2 reviewer organizations for those. I think if you're going to have proposal topics that generate controversy, you probably need more people that are educated on the topics, reviewing and offering an opinion on whether or not we should be adopting or rejecting these proposal topics. So I wouldn't be opposed if we saw 6 or 8, teams being added to those particular proposal topics, just purely for that reason. ICOS version election and protocol canister management, those don't generate as much controversy these days. So maybe only 2, or even ideally more like 4 teams reviewing those proposal topics would be a great number for the next round of reviewers of grant program. But then there's other proposal topics like application canister management and service nervous system management. Those proposal topics do not get reviewed at all by anyone publicly today because they're not incentivized, they're not funded, they're not part of the grant program. They used to be, actually, because they used to all be part of system canister management or network canister management, depending on where you looked. It was called 2 different things. But when they started the Grant for Voting Neuron program, they pulled protocol canister management out from those other 2 and only funded protocol canister management, which means that application canister management and service nervous system management are still 2 technical proposal topics that are very important to IC governance that are currently not funded. And I'm hoping that those become funded in the future. I have a feeling they will be. So yeah, my roadmap is just to continue supporting NNS and SNS governance in ways that make sense and try to set a good example for what that means, and to try to encourage Dfinity to add more people to the mix to move us towards, I believe that the funding for this should not come from Dfinity. It should come from the NNS. It should be part of our incentive structure. I'm not particularly excited about the idea of taking any voting rewards from other people in order to pay for this. I kind of feel like it needs to be a different source of inflation, but it needs to be a source of inflation that we take seriously. I think it's just as important as node providers. The whole point of the NNS is to enable changes to occur, and in a decentralized ecosystem, we're supposed to care about what those changes are and to review them and to just make sure they're consistent with expectations. And then eventually someday, there needs to be organizations that have the ability to actually make those changes so that we're not just relying on Dfinity to make those changes. Again, I think this is long-term roadmap. 20 years or more is the time frame that I have in mind, but we don't just snap our fingers and get there. We need to be building towards that, in my opinion. My roadmap is just to continue trying to spread that message and take actions that help move us in that direction as much as possible.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Wenzel. It was a great interview. And I will leave the link to CodeGov and your social media in the description so people can check it out. And guys, if you want more interviews like this one, don't forget to like, subscribe, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you, Federico.